Thank you everyone for coming tonight. If you are following us online, unfortunately we do not have video tonight, but we do have audio. So prior to tonight's meeting, we did have executive session to discuss legal issues dealing with Delaney Construction, Link O'Neill Pileggi, and we also discussed some personnel issues. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda A through C? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Well, so we were just discussing that. Public comment on agenda items only. What we'd like to do is kind of have public comment after we tee up the issue, and everybody's more familiar with it.
Does that mean public comment again at the end?
So we'll have plenty of comment tonight, I promise. Do we vote on that? I apologize.
We have a motion.
And a second.
A second, all those in favor? Aye. Confirmed appointment, none. Legal solicitor report, none. Tim with planning.
Okay, first item under planning is reserve at Orchard Hill, or otherwise called the Shriner Track subdivision. This plan has been before your planning commission on 2 successive meetings, latest of which was last Monday night. The planning commission did pass a motion to recommend a preliminary approval of this project, which involves 25 townhouse units on the subject property with road access to the Orchard Hill, the existing Orchard Hill subdivision. Mr. Fox is here representing the applicant tonight. There's a review letter in your packet from July 9th, which was the subject of the Planning Commission's recommendation. There are a number of waivers that are being requested. So I will turn it over to Mr. Fox if you want to make any opening remarks.
Sure. Good evening. Nate Fox from Overmeyer on behalf of the applicant. With us tonight, Carl Janetka from Van Cleef and Mark Shigena from Heritage. We got a recommendation for preliminary from the Planning Commission. We'll gladly talk through Mr. Fulmer's review letter. Other than the waivers, we are all will comply. We really started this process probably about 1.5 years ago with a sketch plan. Originally, if I may, I don't know if you've seen the plan. Applewood Drive is one of the roads that goes into the Orchard Hill subdivision from Walnut Street. So this is an infill property which has a flag lot connection out to Walnut Street. We had originally proposed through road from Country Road. Several of the residents showed up at some of the early planning commission meetings. We were very displeased with that concept, so we went back to the drawing board, literally and figuratively, and reconfigured this cul-de-sac with an emergency access to satisfy fire company's concerns, and this will actually double as a pedestrian access. We met with the fire company, agreed on details for bollards or prevention, so it's not a vehicle cut through, but an emergency access to access it if they needed to. And this way, the existing residents of Country Road would have their way of life preserved to not generate new cut through streets. So that really took about, I'd say, Mark, 6 to 8 months of redesigning, working through, and the representative plan you have in front of you tonight is what we hope is the final plan. We're also hoping, there's not really a provision in the ordinance to request waiver from preliminary final. We do feel that the amount of time we've spent with the Planning Commission, and though we're here, I think you've seen this at least a couple times, and with I think, Tim, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think this is a pretty clean letter other than dealing with the waivers, and we'll hopefully you'll agree with us on that. There are 3 waivers that I think really warrant the bulk of the discussion, that we're happy to talk through those, all of them individually, if you like. The first waiver we think warrants discussion is from section 140, 37G, and that is at, forgive me, that is waiver 4H on page 3 from the replacement tree requirement. By the ordinance, 101 trees are proposed. What you see here, all of the 101 trees are shown, but the green trees are what were proposed, and these hashed areas are what we are hoping to preserve as active or passive recreation areas, so the unit owners would have an area to play, walk their dogs, just have some open space. I did just this afternoon provided Mr. Fulmer and Mr. Worstel an estimate. What we would propose is that for the balance of the trees that weren't planted, a fee in lieu of based on a 2.5 to 3 inch caliper tree. Got an estimate of about $395 per tree from Autumn Hill Landscaping, who I believe has done some work in the township, who may be familiar with the township. But if the Board of Supervisors were agreeable, so really it becomes a partial waiver. We know we can definitely fit 50 trees. We think we can fit up to 67 trees without issue. We'd offer a fee in lieu of to the township at a cost of $395 per tree if that was agreeable. And we can come back to that. I'll just get all these discussion items out of the way. The next is from section 140-47BC, and that is waiver 4I. That's the next waiver down. All residential dwellings of 25 units or more require recreation facilities. We are proposing the next waiver we think ties into this. We're requesting relief from this because these are rental units. Pursuant to the lease, they will have access to the recreation amenities in the existing Orchard Hill subdivision. The only exception being the pool, because the pool is built to a limited number of unit occupants, so we can't expand the access there to greater than what the pool was designed for. But there are some tot lots, there are existing trails, and for 25 units, that's a relatively small number, and I think it justifies a tot lot that will become more of a lot of maintenance for a little bit of use. And then the next waiver from 140-60 and 140-63, that's waiver 4J. The township has a fee in lieu pursuant to an ordinance per dwelling unit. Instead of proposing to dedicate land, your ordinance and fee schedule says $2,685 a dwelling unit. We're proposing to pay the full fee of $67,125 as part of this development. And I think, again, Tim, sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think the balance of the other waivers, don't think there was an issue or concern with or any objection, but we can gladly go through this or answer any questions that members of the board may have.
One last thing on the fees in lieu of, as Nate mentioned about the trees and the recreation land dedication. The Planning Commission, even though it wasn't really mentioned in my review letter, they did suggest that the township should also consider a fee for the street improvements, but there is only really 15 feet of frontage of this site along Walnut Street. So your ordinance requires carway widening, curbs, and sidewalks along existing roadways within the frontage of the site. There's literally 15 feet of frontage. I don't know what that fee would look like in terms of a unit price for these things. It's probably pretty small. I didn't really go there, but if that's something you wanted to look into as well, that's the Planning Commission. I think just as a normal process, they always suggest there should be fees in lieu of street improvements. I don't know if they really understood the limitations of the site frontage and it being such a small...
It's a flag lot, yeah.
Right. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there because that was part of the recommendation. Just to be thorough, want you to make sure you knew that.
Yeah, Nate, how many trees did you say you're going to plant? Was it 50 of the 101 or 67?
67
was the max.
Was the max. The bare minimum would be 50, but the plan, the green highlighted trees show you 67 trees.
Okay.
So you do get a robust buffer around, and if you plant too many trees, it becomes difficult for all of them to survive. And we think that's give us a balanced site. The folks will have a little, more privacy and enclosure. Also, the existing Orchard Hill. And Carl, I'm not an engineer, so please step in if I'm saying anything that doesn't
not at
sound
all.
correct.
I mean, we talked about at the Planning Commission providing an areas for some passive recreation too. And what I've done is you can see the green are the 67 trees, and these areas that I colored orange hatch here are kind of the areas where people could go out and walk around, walk their dog, that type of thing. And that would be completely filled in with the other 34 trees. So that's why we're proposing the 67. And
If you drop, pardon me, if you dropped it down to 50, does that give you much more passive area or not really? I mean, you're only talking, what, 17 trees difference right there? It's probably minimal.
You might get, you probably would get some more area over here if there's already a wooded buffer between the neighboring property and here, so you're
Okay.
basically supplementing what's already there.
Okay.
So if you were to eliminate, say, from here down to the basin, yeah, this area could be a little bit bigger.
Okay.
You had started with 5.6 acres of field. What is it now, roughly, with the tree planting? Half that?
I would bet you there's probably, and this is just an estimate, these two areas combined are probably about an acre.
Yeah, which is not much for field.
Right. You might grab another half acre if you eliminated these over here.
Tim, how would it work with a kind of a wait and see on this one?
You mean if they were to go to development and then at some point later on during development, there would be a determination on that?
Yeah, because
Well, what you could do, depending on the applicant's agreeance, is you could escrow for the required trees in the escrow account based on the number that you had proposed, 395 a tree, which I think is a reasonable number, by the way. That number could be escrowed, and then at some point when the trees can be planted, if there's, you know, a number that is reasonable at that point, then the rest of the escrow money could, the rest of the escrow money could be turned into a capital contribution.
right.
I mean, that has been done before in certain instances, and again, that would be up to the applicant if they would agree to that, but
Yeah, we would have no objection to that sort of arrangement.
I like that idea, actually.
I just would hate to see
Lose too much.
a field be, you know, a little tiny strip of grass.
Yeah, and Jack, I think we could tie that into a development agreement that gets recorded against the property, so there's a contractual mechanism between the township and my client.
Okay.
Who's responsible for the emergency access? Is that gonna be paved or?
It is paved.
Okay.
20 feet wide paved, has bollards, you can see right at the property line with the Country Lane property.
Yep.
Country Road, I'm sorry, excuse me.
So the emergency access currently is not, on the plan, is not encompassed by any type of a delineated easement for access, but that this open space area that it crosses through until it reaches the cul-de-sac turnaround right-of-way, which is going to be public right-of-way. So it's going to go from public right-of-way to public right-of-way through an area of open space that's privately owned. There could either be an easement delineated that encompasses that area, or there could be just a blanket easement for access that's written into a document. And I don't know, Jack, if you had any thoughts on that. I don't mean to put you on the spot with that now, but if it should be a delineated easement or whatever, but it should be some kind of public access.
Yeah, I
just,
agree.
you know, just in case you don't want to have anybody blocking it and, you know, have an issue.
Might be just better all around if it's delineated.
Delineated easement.
Yeah,
Right.
no objection on our end. I think that's more clear down the road.
Okay. Anything else?
On the road improvements, can you just run through that one more time, Tim? Make sure I followed that.
So
they're
there's-
recommending a fee
it's-
in lieu of, or at least consider it. but-
Yeah, so there's literally 15 feet of road frontage along Walnut Street, the public road out front, which they're not even using for access because they're taking access in through Orchard Hill. But that 15 feet would be widened for a few feet. It would get curb and sidewalk if you were to follow the ordinance literally. And
Do you mind?
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is Applewood Drive, comes out to Walnut Street, and this flag, it's a gravel driveway right now.
Yep.
So you match, it doesn't even fit on the one board.
Yeah.
So you're looking at literally 15 feet where the driveway comes in. So I think the planning commission is doing their job. I don't think the township wants 15 feet of curb, sidewalk, and road widening. I don't know if you
No.
want to go through the exercise. of
I don't.
figuring out
No.
what a fee in lieu would be, 15 feet.
Yeah.
But that's really what it is.
I got you. All right.
And the gravel driveway is going to be abandoned, right? So we have no intent on using it, and it'll just regrow.
They are dedicating the small right-of-way easement along that frontage as part of the development, which is just additional right-of-way if for whatever reason, you know, the Walnut Street was widened in the future by, as part of a bigger project, there would be extra right-of-way along that 15 feet.
I will do
they
the
were doing
required
their
deed.
They were doing their job.
Yeah. I would agree with the applicant about preliminary and final. I don't see drastic changes coming back from this, Tim, if you're gonna get another crack at it
That's up to the
anyways.
board. I'm
you
gonna
get
review
another
this
crack.
regardless,
Right.
if
Yeah.
it was a preliminary or preliminary final, so.
Okay, and then Tim, can you explain the top lot, the play field, and how it interacts with Telegraph?
So,
Fields on Telegraph.
the Orchard Hill subdivision that was developed many years ago now, it feels like yesterday, but it's a little while ago. So that has multiple tot lots in there, I believe, and there's also a recreation facility on the other side of Telegraph Road, on the east side of Telegraph Road, which I believe is part of that plan, has playfields on it, which I think are township playfields. The ordinance for the 25 units specifies one tot lot and one playfield for that number of units. So effectively, if you were following the ordinance in this case for this development, they would have to provide a tot lot and a playfield. However, as they're mentioning, you know, if the residents of the community have the ability to use the tot lots that are in the Orchard Hill, original Orchard Hill, and also the playfields that were part of that complex, you know, that's, I guess, what your argument is that.
Same overall ownership group. Sorry to jump in.
Yep, no, it's okay.
So the 67,125 a capital contribution, I think it makes sense to turn that over to have Park and Rec figure out how to use that on Telegraph Road to improve those fields.
Yeah, so that number is for, so there's two different recreational components to your ordinance.
Yes.
One is for any residential development of any number of units. There's a there's a dedication requirement for public land set aside for public dedication.
Right.
Or a fee, which is the $26.85 per lot or per unit. And then the other aspect is for developments of 25 units or greater, there's a component of actually constructing certain facilities like tot lots and playfields. And so that's why there's two separate waivers for those types of things. So the money would be going towards the recreation land dedication requirement,
Right.
which I think traditionally the township has used that in any other recreational uses for that money, so.
Are you saying dump it all into the
Well,
fields, or?
you have Telegraph Field that it's basically gonna benefit this community. So taking that money and applying it towards those fields, it could use, you know, bleachers,
Should we take a
nets.
look at Orchard Hill and see if there's anything that needs to be updated with respect to their tot lots?
So I drove through and the tot lots are pretty much self-explanatory.
I think
It's
those are
playground
privately
fence.
owned.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the only
Yeah.
public facilities would be on the other
Okay,
side of
then,
Telegraph.
all right.
And
Scratch that.
Sorry for that's part of the justification for our waiver, is that my client does maintain private recreation facilities, which these folks will have access to.
Yeah, they look good when I
So
drove through.
we didn't think another tot lot for 25 unit
Yeah.
owners made a lot of sense.
So even though it is applied towards the recreational fee, I'd like to spin it around and have Park and Rec use it at Telegraph. Unless you have an objection with it.
I don't, so obviously,
I think that's a great idea.
them taking a look at everything and bouncing it back to us, and then we decide
Yeah.
what
Oh,
needs to be
yeah,
done. Absolutely, sure.
Giving them some money to see what we can do there.
So, is there any more on the waivers for those things that Mr. Fox went through? Just a few other waiver issues I just want to highlight for you. So because of the cul-de-sac revision, there are several other waivers that come into play that wouldn't ordinarily have been part of the original submission because of the through road. And those have to do with the cul-de-sac length. They're slightly longer with the length. They're serving a few more dwelling units than what's permitted. Using a through street is a requirement unless you can't propose that, but they obviously could. And then there was a second waiver about the access points, 25 units or more, or generating 250 daily vehicular trips or more should have minimum of 2 public street accesses. The through road would have complied with that, even though the first plan I think only had 24 units, so that wouldn't necessarily have triggered. But Now that they have 25 units, they need 2 public access points to comply, so they are only obviously showing 1, but albeit the second is not effectively a public access, but it's the emergency access more from a safety standpoint. So those are the other waivers that I think, just so everybody understands, those are in play because of not doing the through road and the number of units that they're showing.
Okay. And those are contained within your letter?
They're all in the letter, yep. Right.
And the purpose of those, I would assume, is for emergency and safety.
Yeah, you want to have multiple access points. The more units you have, the more potential there could be for, if there's an accident out at one intersection and then there's God forbid, a ambulance call in another part of the development, you have redundancy of access. And also cul-de-sacs are, they are not as accessible in terms of, that's the whole point. But, if you have a through road, then, you don't have as many issues as far as access. So those are the reasons. Yeah.
You mentioned you want to go to preliminary final, is that what you said?
I think that's appropriate in this case. There's very little that's gonna change. Have them come back.
So screw the trees, and then 67,125 for the
Yep, and exclude the street improvements
15 feet,
that they're never gonna use.
they're never gonna use exactly right.
Sidewalk to nowhere.
Right.
Um,
I don't have any further questions for Tim or the applicant.
Okay, Joe?
I'm good.
Okay, so we'll propose a motion and then we'll take public comment. Fasten your seatbelts, guys. Can I get a motion to approve preliminary and final approval of the subject application?
You will, before we vote, we'll let you guys
we'll do
comment.
public comment.
There'll be public comment.
Well, sure it does, because we're just laying it out on the table and then you get to comment.
You know what we're gonna
You know what
propose.
we're proposing to do that way.
Okay, can I get a motion for preliminary and final approval of the subject application conditioned upon the resolution of all items contained in Tim's letter dated July 9, 2025, and including a tree replacement fee of $395 per tree to be placed into escrow, excluding the fee for street improvements, and taking the $67,125 for public dedication to be used for recreational use at Telegraph Field. I think that's it.
And the other waivers are covered within
Yep,
this letter,
they're
correct?
in there, yep.
That's just those three.
All right, so moved.
All right, so you have a motion and a second. Now you're going to do public comment?
Yep.
I'll second that.
Public comment, please. Just tell us your name if you would.
We are Maureen and Anthony Narisi. We live at 65 Misty Meadow, and this is in regard to the Orchard Hill Shriner Tract subdivision. We own the property on Country Road Development that has a temporary turnaround easement on it, the cul-de-sac. This is shown on all the plans and proposals for the Orchard Hill subdivision, and all the recorded documents and plans that were given to us from Hilltown Township prior to purchasing our home in December of '24 say that the cul-de-sac on our property is temporary and will be restored as lawn to our property by the developer when the through road connecting Orchard Hill and Country Road is completed. So if the through road is completed, we get our property back as lawn, which is about 7,700 square feet. If the through road is not built connecting Orchard Hill and Country Road, and only an emergency road is built per the newest proposal, then the conditions of the temporary turnaround easement on Country Road will not be met. In this case, will the township, for a fee, take ownership of our cul-de-sac? Will our property be redeeded? Per the newest plans, the cul-de-sac on the Orchard Hill side will be owned by the township. So we have a cul-de-sac with a temporary easement on our property that's not being addressed with the new proposal.
Okay. So basically you're wondering what the township's idea is to deal with the 7,700 square feet.
Right.
That sounds like a... Jack, is that a legal issue or?
Well, I mean, there's not strictly a legal issue. I can understand that the homeowners may be, concerned about anything from liability to, you know, the cost of that land. There's, you know, the township has options. The township could do, they could convert that easement to fee simple, the eased area. There may be some other options.
Is there any reason the cul-de-sac can't be converted with only the emergency road? What's the purpose of the cul-de-sac now?
Because the township couldn't plow that section of Country Road as well as it does now because they don't have a way to turn around. And the road itself would not meet PennDOT standards for liquid fuels funding, which gives the township money for road maintenance because dead-end roads have to have a turnaround of a certain size. The emergency access is not a public access or a public road, so that wouldn't help the township in that instance.
Do you know off the top of your head what the size of the turnaround is needed?
For PennDOT, 40.
Whatever purposes.
Well, there's a minimum for the state requirement for us to receive liquid fuels. I want to say it's 40 feet. Don't quote me on that, but it's in that realm of the radius. Basically, it's 40 feet.
Next question, do you know how wide the cul-de-sac is now?
I do not. No, not offhand. I don't know, Carl. Your plan may show it. I don't know if you have that. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you got plans in front of you there. So.
Well, it's not mentioned, but I'm looking at eyeballing it, it's similar in size to the one that's being proposed. It's a 62-foot wide right-of-way with, I believe, a 50-foot paved radius.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell you that the existing country road cul-de-sac is
Probably similar to that, yeah.
Because it probably had to be built to township standards, and that's what this one, the proposed one is.
Right.
Carl, was that easement ever a consideration when it was proposed to be a through road?
What's the easement a consideration? Well,
In the plan at all?
The temporary easement?
Yeah.
The temporary easement was going to go away and it was going to be restored as lawn per all the recorded documents that we were given. So if a through road was put through, the cul-de-sac would be taken away and we'd get our yard back.
Right. But I'm referring to the new plan.
The new plan, right.
Oh, the new plan?
Yeah.
Good question.
My name's Nate. So if there were to be a through road, the roads were connected, matching
Right.
the existing plan. We came in a year and a half or so ago, and really the neighbors were not willing to accept a through road, which is why we went through a process. I understand that's frustrating and not what you were looking for, but we ended up with a cul-de-sac with an emergency access without a connection point because the other homeowners along Country Road were very adamant that we wanted this to stay a cul-de-sac, and we didn't know that you'd be
Well,
here.
no, they wanted not to increase traffic in the neighborhood.
Well, yeah, we understand. I mean, all that happened, well,
I don't
we didn't
think-
purchase the house till December. So we understand why it's happening, but we want to know what's going to happen with our temporary easement. It's temporary, which means temporary and not long-term.
And I'm sorry, have I answered your question? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to jump off.
That's okay. We talked to Tim, we talked to, well, someone from Heritage, and townships had talked to engineers had talked to the township. So we haven't gotten an answer.
We weren't aware until I spoke with Tim last Thursday, in a very useful and meaningful conversation that the cul-de-sac was not going to be restored in the new plan.
So the sketch plan for the alternative non-through road was in play last fall in late October, November. I understand you were taking ownership in December. It was a timing issue there, I guess, where the new plan maybe didn't get to your attention through your settlement or whatever. But the bottom line, I think the question was more, and what we talked about, if you wouldn't mind, I'll just frame it by saying, even if there's no through road, they have a concern about that easement area, and I don't want to speak for you, but if the township were to take that area as a fee simple right-of-way, it would take it off of your liability or whatever you.
Yeah, that's one issue is the liability, and,
And when you say fee simple, that doesn't mean just $1.
No, well, it could. But so we have fee simple right-of-way now in the development. Country Road, the straight section of Country Road, if it's projecting into the Shriner tract, is fee simple right-of-way. I'll call it the loop of the P, the curvature of the cul-de-sac area is the part that's in the easement, as you probably know.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, since we already have fee simple right-of-way for the straight piece, it would just be a matter of adding that semicircle, instead of it being an easement, being a fee simple, which I think is what the solicitor had alluded to also. But there again, that's a conveyance. I mean, there could be a friendly condemnation of that area, or any number of mechanisms to convert that, I guess. But I don't know, that's a decision of the board, and I can't speak for them on that.
And I, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think at this point, obviously, we hear your concerns, and I don't think we can give you an answer tonight, but I think it's something that we should take a look at, the different options that we possibly could do, or possibly do nothing.
I was gonna echo that. Yeah, I apologize. I don't believe we have an answer tonight. This is a fairly new issue for us.
I understand.
But we hear what you're saying.
Yeah, well, thank you for your attention.
Deanna, you have their contact information?
You have all their stuff?
I'll get it again before you leave tonight. Make sure to stop up.
Okay.
We'll
Just-
take a look at it.
Just to confirm this, the Country Road, your neighborhood, are you guys part of the ownership group of that neighborhood, or no? So this is a separate,
So, I'm sorry, Nate, so when you talked about access to tot lots, where are the tot lots?
Lot lots are in the existing Orchard Hill subdivision, so further down Applewood Drive.
Oh, okay.
So it's roughly between Walnut and Telegraph.
Gotcha, I was getting subdivision mixed up. I guess what is bothering me right now is I'm wondering if action by the board at this moment may in some way limit your options going forward.
Action now, or not, no action?
Well,
To do a final
I don't,
approval, you
I'm
mean?
not sure.
With the
I'm not
preliminary final, you mean?
I'm wondering, yeah, I'm throwing out there that maybe it's better, I mean, there are rights that vest the preliminary plan, don't get me wrong. But it may be better to, if we want to explore ways to address these people's issues, maybe we don't approve everything right now. We might want to bifurcate this.
Can we take a moment and discuss?
Yeah, we can take a moment.
It's a legal matter, right?
What's that?
It's a legal matter, right? So we can discuss? Let's do that.
Yeah, it's real estate oriented, and we're talking about the township perhaps taking it. So
Yeah,
that's
so we can
something
deliberate
We can
That way,
deliberate in
'cause that way we
executive
can,
session, yeah.
So,
Right.
Board like to make a vote to recess.
yes.
Yeah, make a vote to recess.
Okay. Can I get a motion to recess?
so moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll be as
We'll be back.
fast as possible.
See you tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
jump.
Okay, we're gonna,
Back on the record?
yeah, we're gonna ask for a motion to re-adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Where are our residents? You guys are welcome to come back up real fast. So a couple things that were discussed is we want you to realize that that 7,700 square foot that you have will never be grass. It will always be pavement, whether you own it, whether we own it. So just to be real with that. We also feel it's not really fair to hold up the application for this project because of this issue. So what we'd like to do is invite you in for a staff meeting where we can have you sit down with our professionals, come up with a explanation of what's going on and possibly a few options for you. So unfortunately, we cannot give you an answer tonight, but we'll continue this through staff meeting and meet directly with you.
Okay.
If I understand it, you're going to approve this plan?
We are.
Well,
I can't say we are. We're gonna
heard all the
continue with
comment
it.
on it.
Yes. We're gonna continue with the plan.
Okay.
When,
Yep.
do you have a staff meeting schedule in mind, or?
I will be reaching out for dates that you're available so that we can make sure that we have the appropriate members of our team as well as availability on your end when we do have the discussion. So, do you plan on leaving right now?
No.
Okay, all right, then at the end of the meeting, just come up and we'll make sure that we have the correct contact information for you.
Okay, I can give that to you right now.
Okay.
Thank you. We appreciate you bearing with us.
Yes, thank you.
This is fairly new and
Thank you.
quite a process, so,
Yeah, to us too.
yes, I can understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any additional public comment? Yes, sir.
Chuck Klesset. Yeah, I wanted to ask some questions and maybe get some clarification on the waivers also from the July 9 letter, paragraph 4. I guess specifically D, E, and F, the cul-de-sac thing. What is the undue hardship that was requested by the applicant that gave you permission to grant this as per the MPC?
So these are, do you mind if I?
No, go ahead.
So these are subdivision and land development waivers.
Nate,
The-
I'm sorry,
Yes.
could you
Yeah,
just?
Microphone. Yep, I'm sorry. I don't mean to
Thank
turn my back to you. So these are subdivision and land development waivers. Thank you. Under zoning law, there's a defined legal hardship, and whether it's a use variance, dimensional variance, there's a set criteria. The subdivision and land development ordinance requires that the request be made in writing to the township. So the ordinance does say where feasible. What we had done is brought in the through street plan, and that was not feasible for the residents of the adjoining subdivision who did not want a through street. So we asked for relief from the township, so we don't have the same level of legal burden. And Jack, I don't want to get out over my skis if I'm not speaking for the township, but from the applicant's perspective, we don't have the same level of legal burden if this was a zoning case. So a hardship would definitely be at issue in a zoning matter, but subdivision and land development waivers have a great deal more flexibility given, and that's why we have mechanisms in the ordinance like a fee in lieu and things like that. Did I answer your question?
You did. I don't necessarily agree completely, and maybe I'd like to get a clarification from our solicitor about that.
Well, I
And-
think,
And especially referring to the MPC, section 512.1C, where they
512, the undue hardship standard that's talked about in 512 is often compared to the variance standard, which Nate was alluding to in Article 9, called unnecessary hardship. Now, unnecessary, these things are legal terms that have taken on
Or
meaning
undue
over time,
hardship,
right?
as they say, yeah.
Unnecessary hardship is a very difficult burden. That actually whether, that would be the burden the applicant would have to meet in order to achieve a variance, be it a use variance or a dimensional variance in front of the zoning hearing board. That's a 5-part test, and particularly with respect to uses, that's very difficult. The case law that's been born out of 512 and an undue hardship is a much lesser burden. These things are, the subdivision waivers can be waived for a variety of reasons. And that, even though that sounds undue hardship, it sounds like unnecessary hardship, what's the difference between the two? Is a vast difference between the two. And so in terms of what the township and the consideration it gives under the subdivision ordinance, it's a much lesser burden for the applicant. For example, these fee in lieu of and so forth, simply showing, you know, the applicant showed in this instance that, well, gee, if we planted all the trees, probably a bunch of them would die. Good, that meets the burden standard. That why would you do something that's futile? So,
Yeah,
I don't know if that fully answered your explanation, but I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up, is they're two really different standards.
And I was just like researching some recent case law on this, and it seems like that the Commonwealth Supreme Court has been kind of pushing more towards not letting a lot of these undue, or not being so lenient on these undue hardships. And I, you know, and it, especially if it doesn't have to do with land. And I don't think this had to do with land, the hardship that you speak of.
Which waiver would you be speaking about?
Well, D, E, and F on the, in paragraph 4. Maybe specifically E, I think maybe that's the one that's a through street one. You know, and you know, I understand exactly why
Yeah.
you know, residents don't want a through street. There's you know, it's a no-brainer, you know, but
Yeah. Well, the traditional, not to get too far afield here, but the traditional reservation about, in the old days, the traditional reservation about cul-de-sacs had to do more with emergency access. But
and it also has to do with planning of neighborhood planning and rather than having disconnected
and even snow
neighborhoods.
plowing.
Oh yes,
quite frankly, even
snowplow,
snow plowing.
Yeah.
But a lot of those negative attributes can be mitigated with, you know, sufficiently wide cartways or with emergency accesses.
Yeah, I guess I still don't quite see, but you know, I'm not gonna, just because I don't see it doesn't mean it's not there, that the hardship is not there, but it just seems like, you know, a lot of these waivers are given because of a hardship that I don't, you know, it has nothing to do with the land, really. But okay, let me go on to the 25 units. Where did 25 come from?
I'll send that back to Nate and how cul-de-sacs work.
So the 25th unit, we had originally proposed a through street for 24 units.
And was that like, did that go through a full final plan?
No, we went through sketch plan and received significant feedback that we would have received significant objection from the neighbors.
But would you have been, I guess my question is, was it scrutinized so that 24 homes was really what Tim would have seen there, or did Tim see?
Yeah. So the 20, and I don't want to, 25 is I hate to use the word arbitrary, but it's a number in the subdivision and land development ordinance that's a trigger for many criteria, be it a top lot, number of dwelling units on a cul-de-sac. Some municipalities say 20, others say 30, some say 10. So it's just, that's whomever wrote the subdivision and land development ordinance, that was the number they attached to. So my client went through great expense and significant time re-engineering a plan that did have less waivers. The cul-de-sac is the trigger for several of these waivers. So a 25th unit, it complies with the zoning ordinance, and you mentioned, you know, these things having to do with the land. The property is also subject to a zoning ordinance which states how many units, what widths, what type of unit can be there. So the plan is compliant from a zoning ordinance standpoint, but the number of units and the cul-de-sac configuration do trigger the waivers. So as Mr. Worstel had said, our undue hardship under subdivision and land development, you don't think this is an unreasonable or an unsafe configuration. It's not more dense than surrounding properties. In fact, on a pure zoning standpoint, Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, from a pure density standpoint, more units could fit on there, but from a practicality standpoint, you can't fit them because of the geographic and environmental natural resource constraints on the property, correct?
I would have to check the density calculation. I think we're kind of
Right up
close
close.
to it, but you're right about
We're
the
still
natural resources.
need natural resources. So, you know, the ordinance has standards. We complied with the standards to the degree we were able with this number of units and with this configuration, provided the emergency access, but I think you are correct. The cul-de-sac is a trigger with 25 units as opposed to 24. That does trigger some of these waivers. So, and with the undue hardship.
Yeah, because I think it's like 12 is what we, what the ordinance allows, but okay, I thank you for that explanation. The basin, the retention basin, it's made deep and small in order to get more houses in there. We have to put gates around, we have to put fencing around it to keep because of the dangers that are involved with these deeper basins. I think that it's possible they could have put a more conventional basin in there that would have looked nicer, wouldn't have had the fencing. Fencing isn't all that bad, but I mean, but the danger part of it is, I'm more concerned. I think they could have done a better job. One of the members of the planning commission was very, had some very good, very serious concerns about this that I think, I don't know if that member relayed them to you or not, but I think you should hear them. And I think, when you go to 25, I think I was hearing, maybe I don't know if I'm correct or not, if this is correct or not, but was the applicant asking for relief from some of the requirements at 25 and only to do the 24, the requirements of the 24 units, even though they had 25?
So, yeah, I don't want to speak for Nate, but under the ordinance, what happens is at 25 units for development, that triggers certain other requirements. That
Sure.
Some of the waivers are based upon that. Now, it's similar to the length of a cul-de-sac issue. As Nate was saying, like one township, it may be 1,500 feet, another it might be 2,000 feet. There's no magic number. There's nothing really about 25, which is something that is universally accepted. Once you hit 25 units, you have to do all these things. It just happens to be the number that the township planners picked once upon a time. Because of the reconfiguration, their density, with the cul-de-sac design, their density went up a unit. That's under the zoning ordinance. They were allowed an additional unit. Now, they spent some additional money too. And it just so happened to be the magic number.
Yeah, and so all of the requirements should be adhered to, or are we asking for?
Well, I don't want to
Only of
make
the
the applicant's
requirements of
argument, but I
24?
think the applicant's argument is, given the nature of this property, it's a townhouse development. Some of these things that trigger, because they have access to recreational facilities at the sister property, things like that, that to duplicate those things here don't make sense. just because we happen to hit the magical number. If this had gone from 23 to 24, we'd be having none of these discussions, but it happened to go from 24
But
to
maybe if
25.
it was 23 or 24, maybe the supervisors should be asking, oh, you're so close to 25, why don't you give us the requirements for 25? But no, you wouldn't do that. But yet if they ask for the requirements of 24 when they have 25, you're gonna give it to them? Okay, well, just pointing that out. I think that, you know, granting approval on this project as is with this cul-de-sac, this very abnormal cul-de-sac, twice as big as what we allow, 50% longer than what we allow. I think that it sets a bad precedent for the township, makes it easier for the next violation of our ordinance to go by.
Well,
And I think it all pins on, I think this all,
You have the floor, I'm not interrupting you.
I think this all comes down to really defining what the real hardship is and whether or not it would stand up in a court of law.
well, sort of interesting you ended on that note, because I think what the attorneys were jumping at is that, just so we hear this a lot, and it's just really important for people to understand. Zoning cases, the precedential impact of zoning cases is very limited, because there's never going to be those exact circumstances again. Or it's going to be very, very rare. That's why I have no doubt you looked at some Commonwealth court cases and said, oh, well, look, that looks sort of like this, or that looks sort of like that. But because, you know, we're never really probably going to see a property that looks just like this, with just these waivers, with just this length of cul-de-sac, with just these other concerns, it's very hard, legally speaking, to say, well, this particular zoning case should be cited because it's exactly on fours with this other zoning case, because most of the time the court's going to tell you, no, it isn't. There's something different, or multiple things different. But I didn't mean to interrupt if Nate had something else to add.
No.
Generally speaking, I just sometimes feel the need to say that, because I think sometimes we feel some of these decisions have this enormous precedential impact, and they really get decided on case-by-case basis.
And I would agree, there's no precedential treatment of one property to another. The precedent occurs on an appeal, because there is case law that says one neighbor may have the exact same lot as another neighbor. They both request the variance from the zoning hearing board, and it may be absolutely appropriate to deny one and not the other for the reasons Mr. Morrison just said. And these are, in the case law, I think if you look at it with subdivision and land development, there's a greater degree of flexibility, which is why it's a waiver process, not a variance process. But I don't mean to argue, I just wanted to follow up to what Mr. Morrison had to say.
Okay, I'm looking for clarification. I don't necessarily agree with all of you, but I do appreciate what you had to say, and thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck. Any additional public comment? Come on up. Just state your name.
Hi, Terry Schmann. I live at 62 Country Road. I've lived there for over 20 years. Also lived on Wheat Sheaf Lane prior to that for a few years. We love our neighborhood. I just wanted to say we can't thank the supervisors enough, and the builders and the lawyers and everybody who has put so much effort into this for us in our community. It means a lot. You didn't have to do that. I think they're trying to meet up with all the rules, regulations, making things better, not worse. 25 townhomes is one thing to be opened up to, but to open up to Orchard Hill, I don't know how many people live in Orchard Hill, but I know it's a lot. It would change our home to the point where I might not even want to live in that same home if it was changed to open up to Orchard Hill. That's a huge rental community. We are not a rental community.
We don't want, you know, if I was in Orchard Hill, and I had the choice to go out to the traffic light on Walnut Street to head north towards the Perk, or cut through Country Road and end up all the way down that long street at the stop sign, I would choose to cut through Country Road. Who wouldn't, right? And who would want that for their home when they live on Country Road? Nobody that I know, but I just want to say thank you to everybody for considering that, and it matters in people's lives and affects them. It's not just a street, it's, you know, where we all live. And I did not buy in Orchard Hill. I bought in Country Roads for a reason. And I know there was an original plan to open up, but I don't know that Orchard Hill was there because it wasn't built when we were in Country Road. We used to walk through that area. I don't know that it was planned to be so huge to open up to our neighborhood. So, you know, I really think that it would change our neighborhood drastically because people are just gonna drive through. They're gonna cut through Misty Meadow. They're gonna cut down Country Road to end up way down the road instead of going out and around. So, matters to our families, our safety, our homes, and that's all I have to say, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else? Okay, don't see any more. So we have a motion that has been seconded. Any additional comment? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, guys. Tim, back to you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are on to the next item under the planning report, which is the Cablevision Light Path land development. This was also before the Planning Commission at last Monday night's meeting. The Board of Supervisors has seen this in its iteration of a conditional use application recently, where the board did grant a conditional use approval subject to certain conditions being imposed on the use. Mr. Meese is here tonight representing the applicant, and you have a review letter from my office dated June 24th, and I'll let Mr. Meese give you a presentation.
Thanks, Tim. So you have seen this plan because it was before you as a conditional use, and the sketch at that point in time that we used for the conditional use is identical to this plan that's before you tonight. Again, the property is Bethlehem Pike, Keystone Drive, Orchard Road. We've got road frontage on all three sides of the property. We're showing the proposed building that's closest to the intersection of Keystone and Bethlehem Pike, with the proposal that we could in the future have 2 additional buildings, and then the stormwater maintenance, the stormwater design was done for all 3 units. So like I said, this is pretty much identical to the conditional use hearing that you held on this property and approved. Pretty much Tim's letter is a will comply. There are probably 2 items I'd like to discuss just to get clarifications, and then also the waiver requests. Before we jump into those, are there any questions? Okay. The first one, Tim has in comment 1, the second part. As part of the conditional use, you wanted to see some enhanced buffering. So I do have So that plan shows the landscaping that we're proposing in the buffer areas. This is the buffer yard along Orchard. There's some existing young growth in this area here. We're planning buffering there, and then all along this Keystone Drive, which is the section next to that Devonshire Way. And what we're proposing are 94 trees, 158 shrubs, and 1,580 ground cover plantings. So we're hoping that you see that as that's pretty much maxed out. I don't see that we can plant anything else, and that you are fine with that layout. I guess I'll move along then. Comment 2, Tim asked if we would plant those buffer planting street trees. We also do have street trees along the rest of Keystone and along Bethlehem Pike. And yes, we would do that as part of the initial phase when we put the first building in.
So all the buffering would go in phase one, even though the other two buildings may not be built?
We'd be willing to do that,
Right,
yes.
okay. That was a question that was raised just because of staging of things, and it could be years before the other two buildings are built, and if there's things that we're waiting on at that point, you know, it may be an issue. So I don't know if you need to go through a whole letter, Scott, right? Or
No, the only
Oh,
last
those
item
are
would be the
two?
waivers.
Okay, I got you, I'm sorry.
No, I can see the anxious expressions on the supervisors from the last. So we have some basic waivers that we're asking for. We provided an aerial photograph plan rather than doing surveying within 100 feet in our aerial photograph plan, which I could show you is beyond that 100-foot distance. Waivers requested from drainage improvements, cartway widening, and installing curbs and sidewalks along Bethlehem Pike, Keystone Drive, and Orchard Road. In Tim's letter, and I'll jump in, Tim, for you, that he's requesting a fee in lieu of, and the only, we don't have a problem with that other than Orchard Road. We're requesting that that would be completely waived. Orchard Road is not open, it's paper street. It has about a 10-foot wide paved driveway that goes to two houses, and so we just don't see.
Yeah, the planning commission did hear the same question, and I think they were comfortable with the waiver for the fees in lieu of being applied only to the two open public roads, which would be Bethlehem Pike and Keystone. We don't have an estimate of cost for that yet, I'm just letting you know, but that would be your burden to show us that.
Correct, because we have 1,575 feet of road frontage. If you add all of those roads, it's a lot. The third one is pipe size, and basically this is more of an engineering comment, and we have basically downspouts, gutters and downspouts that serve all the buildings that collect that runoff, that roof runoff, and take it to the stormwater BMP. So we don't need very large pipes for that. The storm sewer area, which is kind of more traditional, would be where we have an inlet at the lowest point of the parking lot, and we do have a concrete pipe in that location that's the equivalent of an 18-inch pipe. Then over at the stormwater BMP, we do have a concrete pipe that's the overflow, and we're asking for a 15-inch pipe. Again, it's larger than what we really need. And then the last waiver is a waiver to provide 12 feet of open space area between the outside wall of the building and the parking lot instead of 20. Because of all the road frontage, we're it's tucked in to get these buildings in here, and also there's no employees here. This is a site that has no employees. We will have maintenance personnel come to the site once or twice a month, so there's virtually no traffic, even in those parking lots.
So my review that we're talking about, this is an additional waiver that wasn't in the original request, but Scott has since supplemented his waiver request to include 5B in my letter. And normally we do require or request that the plan be submitted to the servicing fire company, which in this case is Sellersville Station 27. So provided that Sellersville looks at the plan and has no concerns about firefighting, there would be really no issue with waiving that requirement. There is open space, it just isn't to the maximum level, or I'm sorry, to the minimum level that the ordinance says 20 feet.
And those are the only comments that I wanted to bring before the board.
Okay. And everything else is a will comply, Scott?
It is, yes.
I neglected to say that the Planning Commission did recommend both preliminary and final land development approval to this application at last Monday's meeting, subject to compliance with these items in my letter and approval of the waivers as noted.
Okay. Do you have any comment about Orchard Road, guys? Either?
No, that makes sense.
Kind of a dirt driveway.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? We have seen this plan before, so.
You mentioned there were no cost estimates at this point.
Not yet. So even if you take action tonight, if you're willing to do that, you're going to have to determine the fee later on after we get a cost estimate, and we can have that discussion at a future meeting to set that number.
Okay. Yep. Joe, anything?
No, I'm good.
think so. We'll find out.
And just as a reminder to the board, this was subject, as Mr. Mee said earlier, to if you remember, a conditional use proceeding earlier. So there are a whole host of conditions coming out of that the applicant will also have to apply. And it's mentioned here in Tim's letter, though the conditions themselves aren't listed.
Okay. Looking for a motion for preliminary and final land development plan approval, conditioned upon all items contained in Tim's letter dated June 24th, 2025, and adding the agreeing to a capital contribution of street improvements to exclude Orchard Road, and then allowing for 12 feet instead of 20 feet to open space between parking and building upon approval from Sellersville Fire Department. Additionally, cost estimates for fee in lieu of to be determined at a later date. I think that is everything.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any public comment? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, then we will press on here with the next item, which is the Jasinski subdivision. This was before the Planning Commission last Monday night's meeting also. This is effectively a 10-lot residential single-family home subdivision, of which there are 9 building lots, and the 10th lot is a very large, I'll call it a farmstead lot, that is going to be mostly preserved as deed-restricted open space, but will contain existing man-made residential improvements. This plan was recommended for a preliminary approval at the Planning Commission meeting, subject to compliance with the July 10th review letter from my office. And noting that in the waivers, the Planning Commission did recommend fees in lieu of for street improvements that weren't being proposed, also for replacement trees that weren't being planted, and also noting that in 4F of the engineering review, there was a section cited as a waiver of site distance, which we did correct to a different section of the ordinance that would be, in other words, they're going to provide the required site distance, but the information that's put on the plan to confirm that would be relief. There'd be some relief from that in this other section. So I'm sorry for the long-winded explanation, but that was the motion from the Planning Commission.
And again, Tim, the fee in lieu of will be determined at a later date?
Yeah, and the Planning Commission only recommended preliminary, and I think that's really only the applicant's thought at that point, because they have some work to do to work through some of the other stuff. So they will be coming back with a final plan, so if you want to defer consideration of the fees in lieu of till final approval, you can easily do that.
No, for that, you have any objection to that?
No, I don't have any questions at this point either.
Joe? Okay. So we're looking for a motion to recommend preliminary approval for the proposed 10 single-family detached dwelling plan on Highland Park Road, conditional upon resolution of all items contained within Tim's letter dated July 10th, 2025. Is there a motion?
Do you want to include the money on for the waivers?
We can do that during the
You want to do that then?
Yeah.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Aye.
All those in favor? Oh, any public
I'll
comment?
second.
Pardon me. You second?
I second.
I know what that meant. Any public comment? Okay. Seeing none. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, Tim.
Okay, and we are to the end of the planning for the last one is solar atmospheres land development. This was also at the Planning Commission meeting this past Monday night. This is a project that involves expansion of a existing manufacturing use on Clearview Road in the LI district. This is essentially a long-standing business in the township where they're adding some building area to their property to connect two buildings into one, a big building. This plan was recommended for preliminary and final approval, subject to compliance with the June 24th letter from my office. There were some waivers also requested to this one. A few were added which was the street improvements to Clearview Road, basically a sidewalk and overlay, and also the open space issue there as well between the parking and the building. They were looking for relief from that to provide only 10 feet instead of 20 feet. Again, that would have been subject to any comments from the servicing fire company. Nicole's here tonight from the design firm that's prepared the plan. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say at this point, or any questions?
I think you pretty well covered it. We're basically proposing to connect the two existing buildings out there with a little over a 29,000 square foot addition, and then 2 additional building additions for the chillers. One of those being 1,389 square feet, and the other one being 924 square feet.
Okay.
We're proposing some parking in the front, and we're going to be building a rain garden in front of the existing basin.
I see the owner here. Do you have any comment?
Jamie Jones from Solar Atmospheres. No additive, unless you have any questions for me that I can answer.
What do you do there?
It's kind of hard to explain. Most people ask if we do solar.
It's atmospheres.
Yeah, solar panels, but we don't. My grandfather came up with the name before solar panels were a thing. So we heat treat metal in a vacuum atmosphere through radiant heat, through heating elements, and Earth being heated in a solar, vacuum atmosphere by the sun is how he came up with the solar atmospheres.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
So what, yeah, exactly, yeah. So you build cars?
False advertising.
We do a lot of different things. Mom and pop machine shops, they're making tools and dies for machines. We harden them. We do stuff for the medical industry. We do knees, hips. We don't do them.
Yeah.
People make them. They send it to us for heat treatment. So we harden, soften, knees, hips, things that go into airplanes, helicopters, defense, nuclear, power, all kinds of different things.
Oh, gotcha.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you do?
Yeah. I appreciate that. Okay.
Tim, anything?
No, this was a pretty straightforward, and they had gone to the zoning hearing board to receive a variance because they were over the impervious coverage by 5%. They did get their relief from the zoning hearing board. Everything else, I believe, Nicole, was a will comply in the letter. Obviously, the waivers were on the table yet for consideration, but they're pretty basic waivers. There's existing features. They're showing an aerial plan to satisfy that. The parking lot setback from the right-of-way in the front is not compliant with the 15 feet, but they're not in the right-of-way, but they don't provide the 15 feet. They want the waiver for the street improvements, the sidewalk and overlay. Clearview Road is actually in very good condition. I believe the township recently did some surface improvements to it, and the sidewalk doesn't exist there, but there is no sidewalk in the vicinity to connect to. I did recommend, though, if there was a capital contribution that could be agreed upon there, maybe at least for the sidewalk, if that's something the township would like to consider. And then also again, the 20 feet from the nearest parking space to the building, they're providing 10 feet, so that's an added waiver. And I know they've submitted to the fire company. They're probably waiting for any feedback. If they do get some, obviously that would be considered, but otherwise they've done their due diligence on that.
The first waiver was an aerial view.
Yeah, they would have to show by survey 100 feet from the site, but they're showing an aerial imagery which goes beyond the 100 feet. So they're showing the information in a different format, but it's really just so that the township can assess the project in the scope of the surrounding area. And they've shown that this project really doesn't affect beyond the limits of the property, so the Planning Commission felt that was a reasonable waiver because the aerial was showing them all they needed to see.
Any comments, guys, about the cost estimate for street improvements? We haven't received it yet.
Yeah, so we don't have that. That was another one where if they do look for a fee, we would get a cost estimate from the engineer for what it would cost, say, per lineal foot of sidewalk whatever the frontage is there, we get an estimate of cost, and then they would use that estimate as a means to determine what the fee would be. So we don't have that tonight, which is fine, but you would have to at least get that at some later point to satisfy that condition, and we would have to, run that past you.
Okay. Joe, good? I'm good. Okay. All right. Can we get a motion to approve preliminary and final land development for the subject application, contingent upon the resolution of all items contained within the letter from Tim dated June 24, 2025, including the aerial view of the property, parking lot setback, and cartway overlay and sidewalks with a fee in lieu of to be determined at a later date.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Any public comment? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Yep.
Anybody know the Philly score?
Okay, I guess if you're ready, we can go on to engineering, which I have one item for you to consider tonight. The Telford Hauling Facility Expansion Project, which is the waste management truck parking facility on Bethlehem Pike near Progress Drive, is under construction right now. They're doing some earth moving and so forth. However, the contractor and through the applicant's consultant has put in a request. Your normal work hours would be effectively Monday through Saturday, but limited hours in the daytime only, no nighttime hours, obviously for keeping the peace. However, in this particular instance, the facility that they are working on, there is some improvement they have to do to the existing area that they're currently using for their truck facility. And during the day, that's a very busy place. They would like to try to do some of that work in the evening when the trucks are no longer running in and out, so I guess it would make it a little easier and safer. We have a letter from Diversified Engineering, which is the consultant for the applicant, requesting some additional work hours. They would be proposing to do some storm sewer, water service, and sanitary sewer service installations that would take place roughly between 5 p.m. and 12 a.m. over a duration of approximately 3 weeks from the beginning of September 2025 through mid-October 2025. And also, they also requested some permission to work on weekends. And also in the future, they also wanted to know if any future additional work would be required that is unforeseen, I guess, at this point, that they would ask that you could make that an administrative decision of the township so they wouldn't have to keep coming back in front of the board. Did I get everything on that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, could you give your name just for...
My name is Kevin Pack. I'm one of the project engineers for the project. I'm representing Diversified today. You pretty much wrapped it all up. One thing I would like to mention, even though it is 5 p.m. to midnight, machinery would stop at 9, and then hand installation will continue till midnight. So loud machinery would roughly stop at 9. It's the only thing to do.
All right. Okay. So I just had a few things to point out. So there is a limitation of hours, so we wouldn't be talking about all night, going on and on throughout the midnight and beyond. What I would suggest is that even if there's Saturday work, which is not unusual, but Sundays or holidays, we don't usually permit anything like that because of also inspection. We don't work on Sundays either, so if there's any inspection or on holidays, that's usually out by your developer's agreement. You don't permit that. And also, any work on Saturdays or after 7 p.m., my suggestion would be that the township, if there's any inspections required by the township, that the owner would have to reimburse the township at a rate of 1.5 times the standard hourly rate for inspection costs, because it is sort of an extreme situation of overtime. I don't know if the applicant has any problem with any of those things, but those are my suggested conditions, I guess, if you're willing to entertain this.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Do you have any questions, comments?
I do, Kevin. So So the machines will shut off at 9, so you're gonna dig it out in front of everybody, that's the plan? And then start laying the pipe behind it, that's
Correct,
the plan?
sir. Yes.
Okay. All right. And I know the site, the majority of that work, would that be in the front of the site, the back of the site, where would that? Yeah, sure, absolutely. No, go ahead, you're good.
So basically, the utility work would be right here, and this is both the existing buildings right here. So
Okay.
that's why we would need, so in terms of where the work would be done, the side of the existing building, I would say that if this is north, this is the south side of the building.
Okay.
So roughly right here. And this is all like trees and brush right here.
Is there residence or anything?
So it's bounded to the south by the Fiddle Tree development, which is effectively being developed, but not
Yeah,
yet, but it's going
right.
to be. There's nothing there now,
Yet.
technically. There is a residence, I believe, to the intersection of Progress Drive, near the intersection with Keystone, but that's pretty far removed from where they're doing the work. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not
Right,
close,
right.
but it's not like right next door, right, opposite by like 50 feet or anything like that. And the rest of the businesses along there are businesses. They're non-residential. I mean, obviously, Waste Management has their other facilities up the road. There's Oak Castle across the street. There's the Coleman Investments industrial buildings immediately to the west. So you're not talking about this being embedded in some hotbed of residential area.
Correct, yeah.
Is it more of a safety issue, Kevin, from the standpoint of trucks moving in and out? Is that?
Correct, and to not impede on their daily operation throughout the day. So at 5 o'clock, that's like when their workday ends. So then our guys will be able to go in there and get work done without being in their way also. Because these are dozers, excavators. And they already have large, trucks for their, the trash, like the trash.
Okay.
Just a lot going on in a little space. So we're requesting that, we can at least break it up a little bit.
You'd be willing to shut the machines down at 9?
Correct.
Go ahead. Joe, anything?
You can go.
Okay. Any thoughts, guys, on having them come back or giving them a carte blanche for future construction and extension of hours?
I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Nor do I.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But this portion of it, I
We
think
learned
we
our
can
lesson.
discuss. Yes, we
Once.
did. Yes, we did.
Okay. You answered my questions, closest,
Yeah.
houses in 3 weeks, so you're talking, 16 days.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could also, if you wanted, I'm sorry,
No,
but
no,
you could
no.
also say if we somehow, Deanna's office is getting, an inordinate amount of complaints about it, that maybe there'd be a reconsideration of hours based on the nature of the complaints as well. I don't know if there will be any complaints, but if there are an inordinate number, then perhaps there should be some reconsideration to some degree to maybe curtail the activity a little bit more than what is already being proposed. It may safeguard the township and help our residents if there is some problem that develops out there from the activity.
Okay.
So you could maybe caveat it with that, and if we're not hearing complaints and it has to go an extra week or something, and maybe administratively the township could say, okay, that's fine. But if we're getting a number of complaints, maybe we revisit this and have a further discussion with the applicant to see if we can somehow get a solution to those things.
I'm also looking at the duration of time. We don't want to drag it on. We want to
No,
get
we
it
don't.
done for the
Yeah.
impact,
Yeah.
over there
Give it
as
our
well. And I
blush.
understand what he's saying with that. How about the 1.5 rate? I think that's fair.
Oh, I do too.
I think that's fair. I agree.
Yeah, I have no problem. I would add machine use stop at 7 or at 9 as a condition. 9 as a condition, and then, you could put a stop work order subject to complaints upon the township.
And just
At
revisit
any
it.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And revisit it.
So are you guys saying we're visiting for the weekend works? Okay, yeah.
Well, if there's any, I
That's-
think what I'm hearing is that if there was any, if there's an approval for this, and then for some reason we're getting a raft of calls, nonstop, concerns about noise and whatever else, then we would have to kind of address that somehow with the owner or the contractors.
Correct.
In other words, if we give you a carte blanche and then there's complaints and there's no way to address those concerns, then the township's not really doing its fullest job to, protect its residents. So I think that's where I'm trying to. Yep.
And I agree with Sundays and holidays are no. Did you want to say something? Oh, we will. Saturdays, what was the hours? What were you looking?
I don't want to speak, but I think it's the same, right? It would be 5 to 12.
We're just hoping for any date.
Oh, any
time.
time on Saturdays.
Because right now we don't have anything.
Right. So if you're going to permit Saturday work, maybe leave that in the daytime hours like normal.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I know we're getting a lot of stuff here.
That's all right.
Caleb's
That's all right.
feverishly writing up there. So Saturday work would be just during normal hours, no extended evening hours for that.
Correct.
Monday through Friday would be 5 to midnight with machine stopping at 9. No work on Sundays or holidays.
Correct.
And we're talking about major holidays. We're not talking about Flag Day or something like that. Also, nothing against Flag Day, by the way.
Well, good recovery, Tim.
Well, I like the flag too. So, and then the construction observation fees for any work on Saturdays or after 7 p.m. Would be at a rate of 1.5 times of the normal hourly billing rate for inspection costs.
No, Saturday, starting at 7 a.m.
No.
What's that?
Normal business starts at 7, right?
Normal activity on any construction site usually is 7 o'clock. If you want to make it a little bit later on Saturday, like 8 o'clock or something of that nature,
9 feels good.
It feels good? All right, well then if it feels good, we'll go with 9.
Is the equipment staying on site, or is it going to be?
It's staying on site.
Perfect.
You guys can sleep in on Saturday now.
You should be thanking us.
I won't be there.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
All right, anything else?
Good luck.
Let it rip.
All right. So we're looking for a motion to approve extended hours for Telford Hauling. The extended work hours should be limited to 5 p.m. to 12 midnight from Monday through Friday. No work of any kind permitted on Sundays and holidays. And construction observation fees for any work performed on Saturdays or after 7 p.m. that requires township oversight should be reimbursed at the rate of 1.5 times the standard hourly rate for township professionals. Also, Monday through Friday, the machinery is to stop at 9 p.m. Saturday work hours will be from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And this is all subject to minimal complaints to the township.
At which point we would revisit.
At which point, yeah, we'll revisit the issue.
Okay.
That it? All right.
I think so.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Good job on that.
Thanks.
Well done.
Any public comment? Okay, seeing none. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kevin. Have a good night.
And that's all I have, mercifully. Tired of hearing me talk.
Oh, no, Tim.
Good job. Good job.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so park and recreation recommendations. We just are going to run briefly through these and continue commenting. And we're fortunate the chairman of the Park and Rec Board is here, Steve Kendra. So if we have any questions, we can fire them at him. So Hilltown Civic Park, the water line should run to the park. And Jim, you were saying earlier?
Water line run to the park or run to the building?
Well, building. One of those
What the
two
hell?
buildings.
What does that mean,
Steve,
both?
could you step up to the
Steve,
podium?
could you go to the podium?
It sort of all ties into the gray water tank, and if we ever going to use that building for picnics or whatever, we would need to have water so to the building. At this point, our main concern is getting a water bottle filling station.
Correct.
That we would hope would be near that building, so that the athletes and visitors to the park could get their bottles filled. And we're not sure of the condition of the gray water, if it would be usable or not. So I guess we're suggesting that be researched and see if it is a usable tank to activate that building.
All right, well, I can try, as far as the water line to be run to the building, Hilltown Water and Sewer Authority will take care of running it to the outside of the building. We discussed that previously. I'm gonna meet with Bud and Tommy this week to come up with a game plan how to get it there. Most likely we're gonna torpedo underneath the parking lot or go around the parking lot. I don't wanna dig up anything, obviously, more so than we have to, but we'll take care of that. So that's no problem. We'll get that part done.
Okay. Is there any objection to a water bottle filling station being installed?
Do we have any
location?
No,
I don't. Do we have any cost
need.
estimates in that, by chance, Deanna?
Did the board put together any cost estimates?
Do we have any cost estimates on that, Steve?
We have not.
Okay.
We have not.
All right.
Water filling station is not a huge.
No, I wouldn't think it would be. I was just curious, but I don't have
Glorified water fountain, really. It's,
Yeah.
I don't have any issue with that.
Okay. And is there any objection to run that water that we're running to the building to run it through the snack bar instead of just an external spigot for the water filling station? Kind of makes sense if you're running the water to the building to.
Yeah, I think I kind of assumed that it would.
Yeah.
It would tie into the pressure tank there anyway,
come in
inside
and
in order,
back out,
yeah, in
so-
order to get that to the water filling station. I guess the thing, and again, I don't have a problem with it, but if we're talking about possibly using that, obviously you'd have to talk to the health department
yeah.
and everything else.
it's a
That's a
process,
whole
yeah.
nother process.
I
it
don't
would
think
have to be.
we're ready to discuss that at this point. But we wanted, if the water line was going to be run, to be prepared for that discussion. So
absolutely.
that was,
Yep.
And Deanna, is this a job you're comfortable having Bud and his guys possibly work on when the time comes?
If they're able to do it internally,
Yep.
absolutely, but I would have to defer to Bud to see whether
Sure.
or not the scope of work, once we get a full project plan together,
Yep.
is within their wheelhouse. If there is anything outside of their wheelhouse, we would be relying on the board to get cost estimates for that work.
The way I see it working, we would bring the water line in. I believe there's an existing pressure tank inside the building. There would have to be because there was a well there previously. So we would take advantage of that, so that would all be pressurized at that point, so the building would have water. As far as the filling station installation and stuff like that, I guess that's what you're referencing, correct?
Yeah.
So, once we get it to the outside and it's tied into the pressure tank, the building will have water.
Since the building has water, we should investigate whether the gray water tank actually works and can hold gray water.
The condition.
Yeah. Where the hell is that? I don't even know.
Tommy thought it was on the corner.
Do you have
of the
any
building.
idea where that is, Steve?
I do not, but Tommy seemed to have an
Yeah,
idea.
he had
Okay.
put it in, okay.
All right. Maybe, you know what?
He
I'll,
probably put it in.
when we go up there to assess which way we're gonna bring the water line in, I'll talk to Tommy then, see if
Okay.
we can figure out what's going on.
You just, not to interrupt, but I guess I am. So we're talking about basically what's referred to as a holding tank for sewer disposal. We need to verify that the health department it's a permitted system. Again, I'm not sure of the history with that and when it was put in and what was the purpose of it, but if it was not a permitted system, then I would suggest that the township seek whatever approval it needs from the health department, make sure it's a permitted system and we're above board with our use of it.
Yes, and according to what I understand, gray water is sink water.
Yep, which has to be
septic.
treated. It cannot be just discharged to the surface of the ground. It has to go through treatment, so it has to be a sanitary sewer system that receives that water.
But septic is not necessarily considered gray water.
Well, gray water would be like wash water from a sink.
Right.
I mean, obviously flushing a toilet is septic, but it basically it all goes to the same place. You cannot have a gray water drain that goes to a facility that is not a sanitary sewer facility.
Right.
So whatever the use of the tank was originally, whether or not it got any type of a permit from years ago, we don't know. I guess that's something the township would have to investigate in our records. If it doesn't have any type of permit, then the health department, we would have to get with the health department to see that we get whatever's appropriate to get it approved, basically.
And there's no problem using one tank for both.
No, no. I mean, you're gonna have a total flow that you can hold in, there's a limitation to the size, obviously, so whatever, and I can't imagine you're talking about a big flow here with this project.
I would imagine not.
No.
I would imagine the restroom's probably only gonna be open if the concession stand
Right.
will be open.
The rest.
There is a restroom in there.
We hadn't discussed restroom at all.
No, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Laying the foundation. Well, if you're putting in a gray water tank, right, isn't there a restroom in the back of the building?
I have no idea. I don't believe
I've never
so.
been in, so.
I don't think.
We've tried for the last 2 months to meet there and have been unsuccessful
Yeah.
because of weather.
Don't, right in the back section, so concession stand facing the field, restroom in the back.
What is he? He's the chief of police.
Thank you, Chief.
He knows everything.
So,
All right.
hence why I'm asking about septic
Yeah,
and gray water
well-
being married together.
But do we need the gray water tank for a water bottle fill station?
I would hope not.
No, no, like a water fountain type of system where you're just running it off out of a tap basically and filling up. No, it's anything that's going to produce like wastewater or water that is not potable. Basically, at that point, it has to go somewhere so it can be pumped out and taken to a treatment facility. That's a holding tank situation where the holding tank is the reservoir for that type of water, and then you're going to have an arrangement with a pumper to pump it out, take it to a treatment plant that has capacity to accept it, and then that's how you get rid of your wastewater and your gray water.
Great. Okay, moving on, requesting exception to the no alcohol policy for Hilltown Fire Department fundraiser. I know there's some discomfort perhaps with that. I'd like to suggest if the Hilltown Fire Department could look into what insurances would be required, what's available, just to give us a little bit more information as to how to make that process happen. Please. And I know we're talking for 26, correct? If at all.
September 26th.
Yeah, if at all, so.
I'm Jim Foote, I'm the president, Hilltown Fire Company. So we've been holding our annual fundraiser as the Wines on the Hill event at St. Peter's Lutheran Church, and we're currently outgrowing that field, which is why we started looking in the area. We wanted to stay within the confines of our, what we call our first due, or our local portion of the township, and that park does fit that. So presently, in order for us to hold the event at St. Peter's, we have to purchase insurance. It protects the church, protects the fire company, and it runs down a litany of items that we have to assess the type of event, who's selling or who is distributing alcohol, as well as the other vendors and special needs like that. So that's something that we could share with legal, you know, the coverages, but I mean, it's pages and pages of questionnaire and things like that. But so that's something that we presently do. And as we look forward, this is our 12th year. As we look forward to doing that, we're kind of outgrowing the space over there at the church. They've worked well with us for years. That's been the single point where we've held it. We've never had a liability issue. We've been insured every year. We require insurance from all of the vendors, all the alcohol vendors that come to the field as well. So, so I can forward information. I mean, this year is already locked in where we're at, but I can, answer questions. I can forward information as to what, how we're insured and what the liabilities are for that. So, at your request.
Yeah, I won't speak for these guys, but I think I would appreciate seeing that.
Yeah.
Okay. I can get that to Deanna.
That's
and
fine.
you can distribute that.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so requesting an RFP for field improvements at Civic Park, including the new scoreboard, the long chain or Bluetooth, lighting, batting practice cage, warm-up pitching areas, nettings, and dugouts. So at the last meeting, we had discussed this. We're looking at possibly getting some pricing. So
We've not, I don't have anything for you this evening. We have a meeting next week. We were going to try to get some help from Deep Run to get some estimates from them. But I have not heard back on that yet. I do feel like though the last thing on the list for the agenda is some township help,
Yes.
if that's possible at some point, because those sorts of things, we're just volunteers. We're out here, we don't know all the regulations. When we start talking about gray water and health, all those things are sort of outside of our expertise. We're just trying to take the township's opinions, the citizens that we talk to, and make it, offer suggestions as to how to improve the park system. So if we had like that kind of thing for requests for proposals, I think in the manual that we've been discussing, which is also going to come up next meeting, official requests for proposals have to come through the township, where we can provide an estimate, but we may be wrong in the requirements that are needed. So we're a little bit concerned about trying to offer you prices.
Sure. So to bring up Steve's last issue was requesting a staff member for Park and Rec to be hired by the township. And what I think you're saying, Steve, is you're not looking for a full-time employee to run programming or anything like that. You're just looking for some assistance with some information gathering.
These kind of things, yes. I do think if you want a viable Parks and Rec program here in Hilltown, we're going to need that eventually, but that's not what we're suggesting now.
Okay. Jim, you have any thoughts on that you want to share?
I hear what Steve, but I don't think we're there yet with respect to hiring somebody from that standpoint.
Well, I agree.
Oh, okay.
Hiring someone for Park and Rec, I don't think we're there yet either. But I would like to figure out a way to give Park and Rec some assistance.
Okay.
As Steve said, there are all volunteers, busy volunteers. So if we have anybody in the administrative side that would be available to lend a hand once in a while, I think that's what Park and Rec is asking for.
It is, but things like if next week we're going to meet at Berrybrow Farm. I'd like to. I'm already researching how to get maps to be able to understand what we have there, what the township owns, and so that we can look at that in a more knowledgeable way. But to get the township support in supporting that effort, and those kinds of questions would be very helpful.
Any thoughts, Joe?
I don't think, right now, I mean, we're not talking about extensive requests, right? Just looking at this list and kind of, you meet monthly.
Yes.
I can't imagine it being a massive lift to give them that support.
Nor do I.
How do you feel about that, Deanna?
I do think that there is a disconnect between what is being asked and what can be provided. I mean, if you're looking for a map of, Berrybrow, that's something that I can easily send over to you if you put it into a request. It's not a huge lift. The capacity of our workforce at this point isn't at a place where we really have the ability to have somebody work solely on Park and Rec full time or part time. And I understand, Steve's point in that at some point we may be there, but at the same time, I do feel that on the administrative side, we would like to turn to Park and Rec more for assistance on things, like for things that we've asked previously with soliciting for business donations for certain projects or for help with certain activities that we're doing. And I think there might be a disconnect between
Yeah, there is.
the give
because-
and take of
yeah.
assistance between admin and Park and Rec.
Right, we're not feeling like soliciting businesses is our role.
Right.
That's our.
We do have plans to kind of decipher that code.
Yes, yeah, and that will be yeah.
Yeah. And I do think that what Steve is referring to is someone that might work maybe an hour or two a week, not anything substantial.
Which I think is something that I've already been doing, which is why I think that there is a disconnect on this, because Steve and I worked together to try and get material and updates for the monthly meetings. Is it every week? No, it's probably once every 3 weeks that we're prepping for the meeting and then getting feedback from that meeting that's held. And anything that has been requested has been provided. Plus we have Tom that's going to the meetings now to provide additional assistance. So that's an additional, hour and a half from a staff member that's contributing to Park and Rec progress and helping Park and Rec determine what's feasible and what's not feasible.
Yeah, I think Tom's role is to be the information person at the meeting.
Yes.
Not to do any legwork on it.
Right.
And I think that's where the difference is, but we can.
Tom's been great.
Tom's awesome, yes. We can
does a
figure
good
this
job.
out at a later point. We don't have to hatch it out tonight.
But now we know what they're looking for.
Yes.
Now we know yours, so, okay. Yeah.
At the last meeting, there was a suggestion for trash removal at the park, Longleaf.
It's not a park officially, it's an
Yeah,
open
it's
space area, but
open
there,
space.
in our survey that we put out to the township, we got a request back that trash is being left there, and we thought that perhaps there might be an extra trash can from Forest Road that we could move over there, because Forest Road Park's not being used anymore, that perhaps that could solve that resident's problem, and so that was the only reason we put that in.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
What exactly are you talking about, Steve? People just leaving garbage, is that?
There's a field there. I think it's I tried to find it and I couldn't, but there's an open space that there's some like a soccer net, I think. And
Oh, I know where you mean, sure.
Longleaf, yeah.
There's, so phase 2 of Longleaf, there is some open space that the township owns.
Yeah.
There's also some privately owned areas in there that are HOA, but we're talking about the public.
This is the part that's mowed by the township.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, I don't really as the board, we don't really understand the full cost of suggesting something like that. If it's
that's-
over a lot of money, we'd probably rescind our request, but it was just something that we thought we could solve easily.
I think it can be solved easily.
Okay.
I think that's
It's the big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're already
Yeah, so
going over there.
we can make that happen. And then also, as Steve mentioned, August 7th, the next meeting will be at Berry Brow Farm. Is that what you call it?
Used to be
Berry Brow.
the property, the 150
Reserve
acre
or Ridge
property.
at Hilltown, one of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
we have
that's
a-
at 7 p.m.
Right, Thursday night next week, yeah. And the weather looks better so far.
Yeah, we'll
We
see.
may be here again.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, unfinished business, none. New business, motion to approve H&K extended hours for August 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H&K is requesting another extension of work hours for August between 6:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. Monday through Saturday between August 1st and August 31st. They would be excluding holidays. And we had spoken with them about their requests last month. And just for reference for the board, based on their information that they provided for July, there were 9 early starts outside of operational hours for that month.
That's not too bad.
No, considering this is the time of day.
Yeah, it's paving season.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve H&K extended hours for August 1st through the 31st, 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, manager's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the manager's update today, I have a budget update for Q2. I will try to be brief with this.
She's the only one.
What?
You're the only one being brief tonight.
Generally speaking, not much has shifted since Q1. We're still on track in a majority of our categories. 2 things, I'm just going to do some highlights here, so I'm not running through the entire slide, but interest earnings are exceeding in general fund, which we were on track for back in Q1 as well. And we also have an increase of miscellaneous revenue due to some unforeseen things that were brought in or returned. So that was a little bit of a boost as well. For expenses, the 2 things I want to highlight on here from the general fund is that we are under budget significantly for our planning and zoning costs and for our maintenance and repair to road work. However, there were the increment of costs within this last quarter that will likely hit in Q3, so we'll see a big jump in those areas. So Overall, for the general fund, we are at 36% spent in our estimated budget for this year, which is, we're very happy with. For the fire fund, we have collected most of the real property taxes at this point at 97.4%, and we have exceeded our interest. Now that number is 237% of what we had anticipated, but it's only a little over $800. So not crazy. Just wanted to highlight that it looks kind of strange the way that the numbers ended up coming together. And fire protection contributions is at 47.51%, which is right where we would anticipate. So for this fund, we're at about 61% spent based off of quarter two's numbers. For the streetlight improvement fund, pretty easy one. We've spent about 50%, right where we're looking to be, and 52% overall for this fund. For the rec capital fund, again, a bit of a deceiving percentage for the interest earned, but only a little over $11,000. One of the things that I wanted to highlight for the rec capital fund expenses is we're at 13.77% of park improvements that we had budgeted for this year. We had just heard from, obviously, our chairman of the Park and Rec Board and discussed some capital investments that we will be making hopefully by the end of this year. So that number is likely to jump in Q3 and Q4. For this fund, we are at 7% spent for 2025. The stormwater fund, again, interest deceiving, but great that we have exceeded any kind of estimate for what we were looking at, and we're at 0.8% of our miscellaneous expenses, which was the only expense increment slated for this fund this year, and we are at 1% of spending for that. So, state highway aid fund, we have a surplus in interest earnings of about $30,000, which again, very, very happy with. We received a little bit more than we had anticipated for the state revenue and entitlements, which is wonderful, and that can be contributed to having a few more of our roads be put onto our schedule that we had been waiting for, but not known that it was going to hit this year. And again, I know I touched on it last time we did the budget update, but we're at 70.46% of snow and ice removal, and that's a number that we'll likely not see move until Q4 when we get into the colder months of the year. But still, that sets us into a pretty good position to have 30% remaining in that fund to take care of any inclement weather for the remainder of 2025. So for this fund, we're looking at about 20% spent for this year. And you can see it's really not a huge increase from our Q1 report for this fund. Our general reserve fund revenue, we are a little over what we had anticipated for interest earnings, but this number is a lot more of a surplus than we had anticipated. So we're very pleased with this. And we didn't have any expenses that we had targeted for this fund for this year. So we're in a good spot with that for our investment plan, which is enacted for 2025. For the Park and Rec Fund revenue, what I wanted to highlight here was the interest, again, exceeding expectations in our estimates of facility use fees. What we had estimated, now we're in the thick of facility use time for our parks. We had a really great turnout for a number of different organizations. We've had about 3 different Connie Mack leagues or teams that have used our facilities this year. We had the tennis club that used our facilities, of course, Deep Run. There was, some youth programs that went to our parks this year, and other miscellaneous rentals from individuals looking to use our facilities for different types of events. So we're very pleased with where we're at for that. And we're at 99.71 of tax collection, which makes sense for this time of year. So overall, for this fund, we're looking at, again, 20% of that expended, which is a very good spot to be in at this point of the year. Our capital projects fund, again, interest is doing great. Do you want to mention 0% of building and grounds has has been used to date. We are in the process of doing the design for the renovation. This line item was specifically slated for anything ancillary that may have come up prior to the completion of that design. We have 2 air conditioning units that are currently operating from being put together with bubble gum and paper clips. So we are really going to need a replacement on those by the end of the year. So that'll hit probably in quarter 4 for this line item. And at this point, we're at 9% spent for this fund. Open space, 65.78% of interest, and no budget expenses for 2025. Road equipment fund, we're at 130% of interest. Again, not a huge increase, but exceeding what we're looking at halfway through the year, which is, wonderful. And we're at 47.33% of public works capital purchases, which is pretty much where we expect to be at this point. We have a number of things that have already been ordered regarding road equipment, upgrades for machinery, and then we have another one that will likely be hitting in quarter 3 as well. So we should anticipate this line item being completed at the end of Q3. Overall, we're looking at 47% expended for this account. Operating reserve fund, 66% of interest, and we haven't completed those transfers yet. We are still working on getting everything set up for those, but that will likely hit either in probably in quarter 3. For quarter 1, budget summary overall, for revenue, we are approximately 3.5% completed and 9% spent. For quarter 2, just to show the difference in how far we've pushed forward with our budget for this quarter, we're now at 25.5% of revenue collected and 19.4% of expenses completed. So again, just a comparison between quarter 1 and quarter 2 to demonstrate that we are moving things along with our annual budget here. So quarter 3 projections, expenses continue with civic payments from our general fund. We still have a bit of civics to distribute, salaries and professional services, of course. Township building, as I mentioned, the air conditioner, capital reserve fund previously. Capital equipment for both Public Works and the Police Department coming from the capital reserve fund in quarter 3. Park maintenance, being that this is the busiest of times for parks, where we see a lot of things that need to be maintained in the fall. That'll likely hit in Q3 as well. And then highway sign signals from the State Highway Aid Fund, following all of the road work being completed this year, this summer, and then again with the road maintenance and repair coming out of that line item as well for quarter 3 as work closes. Revenues, we're going to see a continuation of tax deposits and the various funds and the continuous implementation of the 25 investment plan. And that concludes my quarter 2 budget update.
Thank you, Dr. Ferry. That was great. Thank you. Supervisors' comments?
No.
I'm good.
So briefly, the road crew tarred and stoned. Is that the right term?
Oil and chip.
Oil and chip. There you go. Oil and chip. Tar and stone, oil and chip, potato. Anyways, they took care of Upper Church Road, and for a week, stone was flying, and I was like, oh, this is awful. But then a week later, they came back through with something called fog coat, and it is beautiful. It's pitch black. The stone is really melded in there, and they did a really bang-up job. So, kudos to them. Okay, public comment.
Don't you dare no.
Yes.
Sole survivor.
My name's Glenn Wimmer. I live in Hilltown Township. Not sure where to start. I was looking at one of the ordinances we have on target shooting. I know I was here a while ago and got a lot of help from you guys and appreciate it. The target shade, there's no safety zone or any, it's a real gray area in Hilltown Township. Somebody could open up a range, and if somebody deems it safe, I could be shooting from here to you away from them, and there's just a, what I did is I can, if you.
Yeah, please.
Sure.
I just printed out the VA game commissions.
Thank you.
Thanks. I didn't know if there's some way we could implement any of
Thank you.
that or where to
Appreciate it.
start.
I think this is where you start.
Yeah, I think this is where you start.
Back in 2017, they actually redid the ordinance to add BB guns and bow and arrows and stuff, but there's like no real safety zone on real guns that are being shot in Hilltown.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have to look back, Mr. Wimmer. I think when we had our discussions previously, I did some research. I just can't seem to recall right now, but I'll take a look back at the file.
You were a great help. You got me 90% of the way where I need to be, and I appreciate it. If you want, I'd be happy to help in any ways. I could leave my phone number, address. I'd be willing to campaign for you guys or do get any NRA support or.
I would suggest, let me look back at the file. This predates Deanna. I'll bring her up to speed on the history of the situation out near your place. And then I'll give me a chance to look back at the file, then I'll reach out.
Plus, it would help our police officers too if they had some type of, hey, this is legal, this isn't legal. It's really a gray area for everybody, and a lot of guns being sold around, and I think it was just a little over 1 million guns a year since 2022 in Pennsylvania, and only 13% of the accidents were hunting related with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. So it's all negligent handling and things like that.
How have things been out at your property in general?
Depends on the day. In general, it's been much better.
Okay. We'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Glenn.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
Have a good night. I didn't want to tie you up. I think I picked the longest meetings. I was at the wrong meeting last week.
Yep, I was gonna say, Glenn sat through the planning commission meeting too, until we told him that the supervisors were the ones that have to really talk to you.
I did learn a lot, though. I'm glad
There
I
you go.
came. Yeah, see that? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care, Glenn.
Any additional public comment? Everybody wants to go home? Any press? Not seeing any. Can I get a motion to adjourn at 9:18?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.